Good afternoon, good evening, or good night, whichever it may be. Um, this podcast or screencast is going to cover complex and compound sentences. To start, the reason that we have spent so much time covering simple sentences so far is because every single sentence that you ever write should have at least one simple sentence embedded within it. Take a look at my last sentence. The reason that we have spent so much time covering simple sentences is because every single sentence that you ever write should have at least one simple sentence embedded within it. The main idea in that previous sentence builds on one simple thought. The reason is because. And that's spread out across a whole bunch of different little other clauses and phrases inside of there, but that's what I'm saying. The reason is because. And then I'm using these clauses here to modify which reason and what the reason is. So here's the idea in that sentence builds on one single thought. The reason is because, and the other peripheral thoughts are, we have spent so much time covering simple sentences, and every single sentence that you ever write should have at least one simple sentence embedded within it. And to build that sentence, all I did was add additional dependent thoughts that modify my main idea. Or let me hyphenate that. To build my sentence, all I did was add in additional dependent thoughts that modify my main idea. My goal was to give you a reason for what we were doing, so my main sentence started with the reason is. To clarify things, I said which reason. The reason that we have spent so much time covering simple sentences. Also, I didn't want to just say that the reason is because, period. Because of what? Because I said so. No, after that I add because every single sentence should have a simple sentence in it. Okay? So the long and short of it is that our ideas are complicated, but our ideas are made up of simple sentences joined by relatively simple words. And what are those words? We'll go over to the next slide. One type of these words is called subordinating conjunctions. Don't let that name throw you off. They're not actually that bad. It's just a type of word that's used to relate two thoughts or clauses together. So for example, I drove my car until it ran out of gas. Thought number one, which is the main thought, I drove my car. Thought number two is the dependent thought, it ran out of gas. That little word until shows when I drove my car, until it ran out of gas. So this one little word here links two thoughts together on both sides of it. So there are a few ways to join simple thoughts together. Probably the most common is this subordinating conjunction. And here's a list of subordinating conjunctions. You can find this list up on the internet. It's out there, and there aren't that many of them, but they do hold a lot of grammatical power or logical power. So because is probably the most useful anytime you're talking about a cause or an effect. After, to show time. Since. Since something happened, here's the effect. Or unless something happens, this is the effect. Once this happens, if. So these are great words to be using if you're doing any kind of analytical or argumentative writing. These words create more or less dependent relationships between thoughts. One thought depends on the other. For example, I ride my bike to work because biking is fun. Because biking is fun is a phrase that makes no sense on its own. You might say it in response to somebody else's question if you're saying it out loud, but if you saw this phrase on paper all by itself, you'd be wondering, well, why because? And so the second part of that sentence depends on the first part. I ride my bike to work because biking is fun. This part depends on this other main part for its meaning. And that's why they call it subordinating. The second part is subordinate to the first. Once you get good at linking simple thoughts together in logical ways, you'll be a much stronger and more clear writer. So if you start a sentence backwards with the dependent thought going first, as I did here, put a comma after the clause so your reader will know when the main independent thought will begin. If I had flipped this sentence around and did, until it ran out of gas, I drove my car. There's a little pause there, and that's where you stick the comma. You should use subordinating conjunctions so that your reader will understand how your ideas connect. So you see how I connected. You should use subordinating conjunctions with the thought that says your reader will understand how your ideas connect. This little "so that" gives you a transition between the two thoughts, which helps to make your thoughts, so to speak, flow together better. I think it just adds logical coherence, is what I would call it, overflow. But some people use the metaphor flow. Okay, so that's subordinating conjunctions. Here is another tool for joining thoughts and ideas together. These are relative pronouns, and they work more or less like subordinating conjunctions. So I'm mostly going to show you the list, which is down here. There's not very many of these, and a couple examples. I drove my car, which was a beast. And you're joining two thoughts together here. I drove my car, and my car was a beast. The which functions like a pronoun so that you don't have to say car twice in a row. If I said something like I drove my car, the car was a beast, the beast was big and scary. Like, instead of that, I can say I drove my car, which was a beast, which was big and scary. Just streamlines things a little bit, pulls it all together, and unifies your writing. Okay? And these little words are often helpful for clarifying what exactly you're talking about. So I don't have much more to say about them other than you should use them and incorporate them in, especially if you want to say not just that you drove your car, but want to add important clarifying information about what your car was like, or which car it was. And the third type of conjunction that we're going to talk about today is coordinating conjunctions. These are probably the most famous and most popular, though I think the subordinating ones are probably more often used. A couple examples. I wanted to drive my car, but it was out of gas. So thought one is I wanted to drive my car. Thought two, it was out of gas. And that short little word in there, but, is a way of showing an exception. The first thought would be true, except for what's in thought two. If I had used I wanted to drive my car, or it was out of gas, the logic there doesn't quite break down. So we're going to stick with or because it expresses how thought one is related to thought two. So coordinating conjunctions do exactly what their name says. They coordinate ideas. The ideas should be equally balanced in terms of significance in your sentence. One side shouldn't depend on the other for its meaning. And here are the coordinating conjunctions, which should look familiar to you, especially if you've seen the conjunction junction video. Notice the use of which. Here, which is right here. Notice the use of the word which is a relative pronoun from the last slide. These are commonly used words, but there's a coordinating conjunction, but we rarely notice that the definitions behind these words are doing some complex logical calculations for you. So some examples. When you use the word and, it means in addition. So in addition to thought one, thought two. But means an exception. I have the wrong word in there. Thought one, except for thought two. So thought one, I wanted to drive my car, except it was out of gas. That's how that exception is worked in there. Or is a simple alternative, either thought 1 or thought 2. So means effect. As a result of thought 1, thought 2 happens. I am good, so I get chocolate, right? For is the opposite, which means a cause. As a cause of thought 1, thought 2 happens. I am good, for I helped a stranger. So this one is the cause of the first one. Nor is kind of the opposite of or, which is neither thought 1 nor thought 2. I am neither good nor bad, is an example of that. Yet means in spite of. I like that one, and I think it's underused. But it means thought 1 in spite of thought 2. I feel great, yet I am sick. I feel great in spite of being sick. In short, these little words are powerful tools for constructing arguments and for conveying information, especially in a clear way where you want to make a distinction between one idea but not the other idea, yet still the first idea. You can convey a lot of subtlety if you really link together simple sentences carefully with these words. And you're probably wondering why the commas. The commas indicate that despite it seeming like one thought is ending when you're reading it, it will in fact carry on. The comma signals a brief pause, but it also serves as a placeholder for your reader's thoughts. So in an example sentence, I see a comma, so I will remember what I just read, and I will compare it to what I am reading now. Commas remind your reader not just to plow through your writing, but to thoughtfully pause and consider each thought and item in its relations to the next. And that's what conjunctions do for you. I would say the key here is to rely on simple sentences to link together with those conjunctions. So what I have here on this slide is a pattern of building complexity. And the building blocks are just simple sentences. Cats rule, cats catch mice, cats hunt, cats that hunt rule, cats rule, sometimes they don't hunt. And I'm just linking them together to form a more and more complicated thought until I get to cats that hunt rule because they catch mice, but sometimes cats don't hunt. And then I could even go on and say, so therefore not all cats rule. The building blocks are simple sentences, and you just have little conjunctions or subordinating, relative, or coordinating conjunctions that indicate how the ideas are linked. Often in the writing process, we are unsure of exactly what we want to say, and that's why we free write, to get our ideas out. But once the idea is out, we can analyze it into smaller pieces and then reconstruct it in a way that's organized and clear. And this process of organizing our ideas isn't just a process of writing them down. It's also the process of ensuring that we understand the ideas for ourselves. If we can't write it down, do I really understand it? And starting simple and then building upwards in complexity will help you not just keep track of your ideas and understand them better, but also to get them written down as you go. Okay, and that's all I have on complex and compound sentences. I do want to show you real quick a website, and this is called chompchop.com. You can go to it here. If you click enter, and if you have any questions about the terms that I've been covering, click on the terms button. If you want to do some exercises, it has those as well. And you can come in here and you can look at what a subordinate clause is or a subordinate conjunction. Pretty much anything you need to know about grammar, you can find a good definition of it for in here, as well as examples and sample sentences that you can look at. So thanks for tuning in. Feel free to rewind and rewatch as needed, and we'll see you later.